When thinking of prejudice and advertising, one particular campaign which many of us might have witnessed springs to mind. In 2009, Reconciliation Australia launched a campaign to fight people's prejudices around Indigenous Australians. A series of ads on posters, television and newspapers around the city showed the faces of two Australians side by side, one Indigenous and one non-Indigenous. The questions that were asked underneath the images were: which one of these men is in a gang? Who would you trust to look after your kids? Who would you want to work with? For an educated and politically correct 21st century viewer, these images come across as shocking, racist, and unacceptable, thus proving the whole point of the campaign. However, images very similar to these were used in the beginning of the 20th century simply to promote goods without people raising a brow. "Oh, why don't you use pear soap?" says white little girl to a little black girl, obviously pointing to her darkness and perhaps her being dirty. The image truly speaks for itself. However, racial prejudices were not the only ones that were being conveyed by advertising industry. The truly striking feature of many ads from 1880s on was the underlying chauvinism and sexism that dominated the industry, reaching its peak in 1950s and later finding its way into 21st century, arguably being just as present in commercials now as it was before. At the dawn of advertising, the goods were talking for themselves. Newspapers would publish a page worth of advertisements, most of them consisting of a simple description of a product featured. If we look at them today, we would see plain blocks of quite laconic text, not varied in typeface or size, with not much graphics or catchy slogans, just the descriptions of merchandise sold. Tailors would often print a list of the offered designs and their prices, along with pictorial etchings or engravings of the latest fashions, and put them in the shop windows. With time and advancement of engraving and printing technologies, those early advertisements found their way into magazines like The Tailor and Cutter or Ladies Magazine, dedicated mostly to promoting goods. However, it was not until the mid-century that we start to encounter advertisements in form that is more familiar to us. It was then when the agencies were starting not only to advertise the product and its qualities, but started to think about the market, started to think about the audience that they needed to target and the ways to create new demands and form trends. And the result was appearance of personalized ads in form of brochures, pamphlets, articles, and colorful pictures and photos that would not just show off the qualities of the product, but would also advise how you and your life would change if you use the said product. And once they've started depicting social reality, or so to speak, enhanced reality they were trying to sell, all the social and gender stereotypes came to the surface. I'm going to look particularly at 1920s, 30s period in American advertising, as it provides us with quite a broad scope and variety of visual materials. Images of a home-oriented womanly housewife, an accomplished hostess, or a mother whose only goal is to make your husband happy dominate early ads. "Watch that you don't disappoint him," some of the slogans would say. A great emphasis was put on being a good and efficient housekeeper, depicting women admiring vacuum cleaners, staring in disbelief in open refrigerators, choosing the right kind of bread that would save the marriage, or keeping neighbors happy by washing their kids' grimy faces. Idealistic depiction of wifehood, even though it was gradually being seen as an important job, a business or even a factory of its kind, was still very limiting in terms of the role of woman in society. Which brings us to another widespread prejudice that stressed the role of wife belonging to home rather than the world of career and professional achievement. Women would often be depicted in home environment or in the garden, surrounded by kids and soft picturesque landscapes, while men would be portrayed against harsh city landscapes or corporate meetings. It was very rare that a woman would be shown inside an office, working usually as a secretary or a clerk. While male-oriented ads promoted strive to achieve goals, gain professional recognition and success, females were still seen as mere companions to men with a natural inferiority complex, whose main task was to provide happy and comfortable atmosphere at home. A focus on decorative role of a woman and importance of beauty and appearance was quite a prominent one, with advertising phrases like "life is a beauty contest and even a modest girl can win it if she uses such and such soap," or a mother saying to her baby daughter, "I'm starting your beauty plans now by using this soap to keep your lovely complexion," Women were often seen as beauty and youth-centered accessories to men that beautify their husbands and raise their prestige in the eyes of the others. It was also in the 1920s when the tall and very slim model look, with arms, fingers, eyes, and necks often stretched to grotesque proportions, started to be popularized, and a woman's body started to be seen as an object that could sell almost anything. These two trends are still causing a lot of controversy in nowadays world, with the underweight models and overwhelming teenage sex appeal. And it is interesting to see that 90 years on, advertising is still using the same techniques, only stretching them a bit to accommodate our society. Men, on the other hand, would often be portrayed as credible figures of authority, with a firm, confident stance, as opposed to women's soft, submissive, and also often passive and obedient poses. Doctors, lawyers, or specialists giving advice on how to use certain solutions or appliances would inevitably be male, stressing the popular belief that while a woman can certainly be more artistic and fashion-forward when it comes to, say, home decoration or choosing clothes, but when it comes to prosaic realities, only a man can provide reliable advice, because he's not as emotional and full of inarticulate longings as females. Looking at posture and positions of women in the ads gives us a lot of clues to the psychological message that was being sent. Irving Goffman conducted a research in 1976 on positioning of women in advertisements, and he identified 5 major symbolic behaviors that are still in use today and can also be applied when analyzing advertisements of the past. What Goffman came up with was: Number 1, body cant or bashful knee, when a model assumes awkward and unnatural body position in order to become a sight to be gazed upon. Number 2, recumbent figure, when the model is shown reclining or lounging and conveying sexual innuendo. Number 3 is psychological or licensed withdrawal, when the model is presented as inferior and inactive, appearing to be drifting off, gazing into space, or mindlessly daydreaming. Another pose was called an engaging gaze, a passive pose where a model engages with the viewer with a seductive eye contact or a sexually seductive look. And the last one is named touching self, when the model touches or covers parts of her face or body with her hand, suggesting shyness, girlishness, and submission. An interesting fact is that even though advertising industry as we know it is about 150 years old, and one would accept it to have evolved and adapted to cultural and historical evolution of society, some of the recent studies show that, surprisingly enough, not much has changed. A study of sex role stereotyping across cultures conducted in 1999 that compared TV commercials from 5 continents and compared and contrasted 14 previous studies on stereotyping from different countries showed that in terms of presenting, women were more likely to appear visually, while male voiceover would be used as a narrator, emphasizing credibility and authority of male figure that we have mentioned before. When it came to the overview of products advertised, studies showed that women were more likely to advertise products that could be used at home, like lotions, nappies, and dishwashing liquids, while males are being shown with products away from home, for instance, cars, motorbikes, or sports goods. When it comes to visual appearances of models, it becomes obvious that little has changed, and the majority of commercials see an independent, usually serious, muscular, either white-collar or hard-working man who is capable of taking over the world, while a woman is still seen as a charming and girly object of adoration, a caring and gentle mother, or a sultry sexual object. While we cannot ignore the fact that attempts were and are continuing to be made towards lessening of the stereotyping in the commercials, such as allowing men to presume previously female position and intentionally understating traditional masculinity, or presenting women as equals to men in terms of careers, household roles, and even physical appearance, still, the majority of advertising material is full of prejudices that are as present now as they were 100 years ago.